terrain always has a ground effect covering it. We can open it in a couple of ways. One, we could double-click the ground effect in the scene at a glance. Or, as I accidentally did earlier, you can double-click the component in a rendered view. And that opens up the editor for that component. And if we go over to the material page, you'll see we have the selected material section, one of which is the diffuse color. So click on that color well, and that brings up the color editor. Now what we can do is put a new color in, choose a color, or frequently we'll use one of the earth tones or one of the rock tones, one of these swatches. You can make swatches of your own. We're not going to do this because we're going to use a pre-built component, so you can cancel out of that. Back in the editor, load component, and that will bring up the component gallery to its ground effects section. Scroll down one more page to the Mars ground, double click to load it. Simple as that, we now have Mars ground and can render a preview with your favorite F9 key. Now it's starting to look a little more like real terrain thanks to the ground effect there. Now when we click on the terrain, we're seeing Mars ground in the diagnostic data. Well, now that we have real looking ground, let's go ahead and plant something on it. And we're going to do that with a simple ecosystem from the component gallery. Right click the ecosystems category in a scene at a glance and select add component from gallery. That will bring up the component gallery to the ecosystem section. And we want to go down to the end of the general page where we have the spruce fir forest. Go ahead and double click that to load it. And the load ecosystem box pops up and it wants to know if we want to scale elevations, and let's go ahead and scale elevations. And that takes care of that component. Well, we'll look at ecosystems more in an upcoming tutorial. For now, let's just look at the rules page. We use the rules of nature to tell VNS which terrain polygons to render the ecosystem on. For now, we'll just note that the ecosystem here is set to render on all polygons between a minimum slope of 0 and a maximum slope of 45 degrees. For information on these and the other rules of nature, go ahead and open up the interactive reference manual with your F1 key if you'd like to read about that now, because in that section all the features of ecosystems are described and gives you a good introduction to that stuff. And certainly stick around for the tutorial on fields and forests, because in that case you'll be able to build your own ecosystems, which will come in very handy when you want to make your projects look different than everybody else's. Okay, save the project. Let's do an F9 for preview render. And you can see we're loading foliage. Yes, we were loading foliage in the status window and the animation toolbar at the bottom of the screen, but we don't have anything. Well, just because you have an ecosystem doesn't mean it gets planted. Ecosystems have to be attached to a vector, a color map, or environment, or VNS doesn't know where to put it. And since we haven't attached it to anything, it's not rendering anywhere. Well, we don't want to limit the lateral extent of the ecosystem, so we're not going to use a color map or a vector. We want it to render globally. And the easiest way to do that is to attach it to an environment, because unattached environments have a global effect. And we just happen to have an environment. So in the scene at a glance, expand the ecosystems category, click and drag the spruce fir forest down on the island environment. When asked, confirm that you want to add that ecosystem to that environment. And if you open up the environment to its ecosystems page, you will see we have the spruce fir forest now part of that environment. So save the project, F9, and you will now see ecosystem. And trees upon trees up to a maximum slope of 45 degrees. And as we're sitting here waiting for this to render, you'll notice that as we add things, it takes a little longer each time we add something to render. All those little trees. The spruce fir forest ecosystem is made up of 24 image objects of grass, weeds, and trees. You may have noticed them added when we added the ecosystem. You may have noticed that the image objects category here went from 2, which was just the moon and sun, to a lot more, which includes all these other image objects. The best place to find them and work with them is the image object library, which is this icon on the toolbar. So click that to open the image object library. And this is a place you can add, remove image objects, and edit image properties. To optimize image loading and render time, let's go down to this keep in memory section. And we're going to load fast and apply to all. Now what that's going to do is create WFL versions of each of those image objects, which is a faster loading format than the standard image format. So that way, every time VNS has to use that image, it will use its fast loading format rather than having to convert the image every time. Apply to all, and we're set with the image object library. So go ahead and close that out.